A pale mist curls over the damp grass of Runnymede. It clings to boots and brows alike, seeping into bone, into breath, into the silence. Dawn is only a suggestion here, not a sunlit promise, but a cold gray hush, as if the heavens themselves are holding their breath. The rain from the night has softened the ground into a mute sponge, every hoffle absorbed into the earth like a whispered confession. Somewhere nearby, a crow clicks its beak. Then silence again, banners droop with the weight of dew. Their colors muted, their crests sagging, they no longer shout lineage or pride, they hang like shrouds. Silk turned sodden, power turned soft. In the open space between trees and river, the circle forms. On one side, the king, John Plantagenet, a figure more beast than monarch, eyes sunken, rage simmering just beneath the surface of his bloated face. His fur-lined mantle does not warm him, not today. He stands not as sovereign, but as a man dragged to the altar of his own undoing. His lips twitch, but they do not speak. Around him, knights shift uncomfortably. They do not reach for their swords, not yet, but their hands remember the motion. Across from him, the barons, hardened not by ceremony but by years of humiliation, scorched fields, dead sons, and 1,000 oaths swallowed like gravel. Their cloaks are thick, their blades sharper, still, and yet they do not shout. No triumph rises in their throats, only the steady, breathless quiet of those who have lost too much to ever truly win. Between them lies the vellum, a single sheet, thin but heavier than iron. Its ink is still damp. The words are Latin, formal, precise, but the blood behind them is English. The words do not ask, they demand. John does not read them aloud. He knows what they say. He has had them explained again and again by lips that tremble even as they speak. Limits, not suggestions, not negotiations, but chains, forged from the grief of his realm. Here are the walls of his power, drawn in careful lines. Here are the rights he may not touch, the taxes he may not raise, the punishments he may not deal. Here, written cold and clear, is the idea that a king, even a king, is beneath the law. He signs. The quill moves like a blade. The moment is bloodless, but it wounds him all the same. A breath escapes from the circle, like steam from a broken seal, yet no one cheers. The barons do not rejoice. They are men made of battle and regret, and they know this is not peace. It is a pause, a reshaping, a momentary balance in a land still trembling. Their eyes flicker to the king. They do not bow. John meets their gaze, then looks away, not in fear but in calculation, always calculation. Even in defeat, his mind twists for advantage. He is a cornered animal now, teeth behind silence, waiting. Beyond the meadow, beyond the velvet of the noble's world, the peasants pause. A woman rinses her hands in the river, and looks up. A shepherd halts midst, sensing a ripple in the morning. A child stirs from sleep, and hears nothing, and yet something different clings to the wind. They do not know the name of the charter, but they feel its shadow. The air has changed. The ground feels less owned. It is not freedom, not yet, but it is fracture. Somewhere beneath the trees, a monk prays with shaking hands. His beads click like raindrops. He mouths no words, only awe. He has copied scriptures that speak of divine order, of kings chosen by God, and yet here, now, under cloud and mist, a different scripture has been written, not on holy parchment, but on the flesh of a broken kingdom. He does not know if he should kneel or run. A bird takes flight, its wings cut the silence. For a moment all heads tilt upward. It is a simple thing, feathers against sky, but in that moment it feels like an omen, or a question. What comes next? Because this scene, this quiet battlefield of law over blood, is not an end. It is a door, and doors can swing both ways. Already, the ink begins to dry. Already, John's mind turns to evasion. The seal may be pressed, but his pride is not buried. He will appeal to the Pope. He will seek to nullify, to unravel. He will not accept chains for long. Tyranny, after all, does not surrender. It retreats, it festers, it waits, and the barons, they too carry swords, they too have ambitions hidden beneath their demands. This moment is not purity, it is compromise. A reckoning made not from unity, but from exhaustion. Even as they hold the charter in their gloved hands, their thoughts turn to enforcement, to defense, to war. But the seed is planted, and seeds do not forget how to grow. This ink, this page, they will echo, through parchment copied in abbeys, through whispers in courts, through rebellions yet to come. They will rise again in storm and speech, in common law and revolution. A spine has been laid, it will take centuries to flesh it out, but the bones are here, and though the peasants walk home barefoot and silent, their silence is not the same. Something cracked today, not shattered, not yet, but cracked. The divine right of kings now has a seam. The river flows past Runnymede, uncaring. The grass will grow again, the banners will dry, John will leave, fuming, brooding. The barons will return to their keeps, but the field remains, and in the stillness of that ground, in the moisture of mist and memory, a different kingdom breathes, one not of kings, but of law, one not yet born, but stirring. As the mists begin to lift, and the first true light of morning touches the parchment, it glows, faintly, and in that glow is the fragile beginning of something vast. The bird circles once above the field, then disappears into the trees. The chapter is closed, but the story has only just begun. A candle guttered in the scriptorium, and the darkness crept in like doubt, through a soul. Wax bled down the wood in quiet rivers, pooling in forgotten grooves, the oak groaning faintly beneath centuries of ink and prayer. Brother Alred bent lower, his face a map of shadows, nose nearly touching parchment. The ink glistened still on the page, not yet dry, not yet permanent, like the moment they lived in. Outside, beyond the cloister walls, hooves hammered the earth with urgency. Riders bore parchment like fire, fire that could burn through chains. They did not know the words they carried, most could not read, but they rode with the urgency of change. And inside these stone walls, where silence was sacrament, a monk with aching hands and failing eyes whispered that change into the parchment. He was alone now, the others had gone to vespers, bells called them, but not him, not yet. His soul was tied to the ink, his ribs ached from the cold, his fingers trembled, but still he wrote, Nullus liber homo capiatur, no free man shall be seized or imprisoned, save by lawful judgment. The words felt heavy in his throat. He did not speak them aloud, only mouthed them, silently, reverently. He was no lord, no baron, who had stood sword to crown, yet here he was, midwife to their defiance. He traced the letters like a prayer, as if afraid to break their spell. Beyond the candlelight, the scriptorium lay in shadow. Books lined the walls, saints, psalters, scribbled sermons on vellum browned with age. But this was not scripture, this was man's rebellion, not against God, but against the unchecked hand of other men. He thought of the beggars outside the gates, of peasants hunched under sacks of barley, of widows, forced to pay for what had once been theirs. He thought of the boy beaten for gathering wood in the king's forest, the yeoman dragged from his home to pay a debt not his. Their faces floated before him now, not as memories, but as witnesses. His quill scratched on, carving hope in curves and loops. Not divine right, not the mandate of heaven, but the voice of the governed. Was that heresy, or was it salvation? He paused. The wax had reached his wrist, warm and fragrant. The crucifix watched him from above, stern, silent. He looked up. Was Christ also a rebel? Did he not overturn tables, speak for the voiceless, challenge emperors? A gust of wind slipped through the crack in the stone, and the candle faltered, flame bending, shrinking, before righting itself. Alred watched it sway, as though the world outside were breathing against these sacred walls. It would not stay out forever. He dipped his pen again. To no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right or justice. He stopped. Those words, they frightened him, not because they were bold, but because they were clear. No riddles, no Latin cloaks, just justice. He could hear the wind louder now, a howl across the moor, or a whisper between battlements. Something moved out there, not just riders, not just rumor, but history, shifting. It had no face, no banner, but it was coming. Alred's hand trembled as he finished the line. The ink blotched slightly. He exhaled, slowly, as though afraid to disturb the parchment. He stood. His back ached from hours hunched. He walked the length of the scriptorium, slow, reverent. Shelves stared down at him like judgment. Saints and martyrs, pages gilded in gold and red, relics of certainty. But here, on his little desk, lay something else entirely. Not Holy Writ, but a reckoning. He returned, sat once more. The candle was lower now, the wick a crooked skeleton. He thought of the king, of how his hand must have trembled as he sealed the charter, hemmed in by steel and silence, of the lords who pressed him, not for glory, but for restraint, of how power, once loosed, had found a wall. Could a king be bound? Truly, he dared to believe it. And what of this ink, this humble copy he now made? Would it matter? Would it reach? Or would it molder in some monastery chest, forgotten, devoured by worms? He pressed his palm flat to the parchment. It was still warm, still alive. Outside, the bell tolled again, louder now, a call to prayer, to obedience, but also, perhaps, to memory. He gathered his pages, laid them neatly. His hand lingered on the final clause, not for review, but farewell. These were not his words, but he had baptized them in labor. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A feather, loosened from his quill, drifted down through the candlelight. It spiraled, soft, golden-edged. Alred watched it fall. No wind, no sound, just the feather, descending, as if from heaven. He did not move, did not speak. The candle flickered once more, then stilled, and in the silence, he bowed his head, unsure if he had just witnessed a scribal accident, or an omen. Beyond the walls, the riders vanished into the night, and with them, a parchment, not of power, but of restraint. In the darkness of England, a light had been lit, but who would tend the flame? The torch gutters in its sconce. Its flame, like the night's hope, flickers beneath the breath of coming ruin. Smoke coils upward, thick as mourning cloth, and the stairwell stinks of sweat, blood, and wet stone. Outside, the cry of a trebuchet splits the air, a wooden titan, groaning with the weight of hate, and then the crash. Stone meets stone, dust cascades from the ceiling. Somewhere, a scream echoes, cut short. He stumbles back into the shadows. His shoulder pulses with pain, warm blood sliding down his side. The cloth pressed there is already dark, but the scroll is dry. He checks it again, trembling fingers brushing the wax seal. The ink now blurred slightly, by heat and breath and battle. His name is Thomas. The world may never remember it, but his oath, bound in sweat and memory, holds like the last stone of a crumbling wall. He remembers the field at Runnymede, the hush that fell as the ink dried, the uneasy truce between king and barons, a parchment, peace weighed down by centuries of tyranny. The men had stood tall that day, but their eyes flickered with doubt. A charter, they'd said, a cage for kings, but not all chains are iron. Now those words are under siege, not in parchment halls, but here, where stone shatters and men scream, where justice clings not to parchment, but to broken swords and splintered shields. The king's wrath is absolute. John, once forced to sign, now seeks to burn away memory itself. This is not just a siege, it is an unmaking, a violence against the very idea that power might kneel. The young knight crawls toward the arrow slit, his body screaming in protest. Outside, the courtyard is a furnace of fire and mud. Royal troops, clad in the king's colors, move like wolves in the storm. One man, face cloaked in a helm of black steel, shouts orders above the gale. Arrows rain down, each one a promise of silence. Thomas grips the scroll, not because it can stop death, but because it dares to name it, to call injustice by name, to demand account from the throne. He thinks of his father, a simple man, proud, calloused, broken. Their lands, once green and free, were seized in the wake of royal levy. His father's crime, failure to pay what could not be paid. The king's men came with writs and swords. They left with the harvest, and the last of their coin. His father died that winter, not from blade, but from cold, and the gnawing shame of helplessness. Thomas had buried him beneath frozen soil. No priest, no psalm, only a promise, never again. Now that promise sits in the folds of his tunic, fragile, flammable, holy in its defiance. The walls tremble again. A section of masonry collapses with a roar that silences even the storm. Dust billows like a ghost. Thomas closes his eyes. He can barely breathe, but his fingers tighten around the hilt of his sword. A voice echoes down the stairwell, muffled, frantic. Archers to the north wall. They've breached the outer gate. Footsteps rush past. One man stumbles, pausing to look at Thomas. Their eyes meet, a flicker of recognition, then gone. There's no time for mercy here, only movement, only defense. But Thomas does not move. He is beyond the rhythm of battle now. In the heart of the siege, something older stirs, a memory of every rebellion crushed, every hope drowned in royal decree. He presses the scroll to his chest, feels the heartbeat beneath. It still beats, so does the cause. Thunder cracks. The rain becomes a flood, cascading down the stone like the tears of forgotten peasants. Somewhere in the gloom, a bell tolls, once, twice, then silence. He imagines the charter's clauses. To no man will we sell, to no man deny or delay, justice or right. Words written with trembling ink, now guarded by trembling hands. They are not perfect. They were not meant for all, not yet, but they are a beginning, like a candle lit in a cave, or a seed planted in scorched earth. He does not dream of glory, only survival, only memory, that one day, another boy might read those words and believe them. A stone strikes the tower, the ceiling splinters, screams rise again, but this time closer. The keep is failing. Even the stone rebels against this siege. Thomas drags himself toward the spiral stairs, every step a hymn of pain. Holy blood smears the wall. He does not know if he walks toward escape, or the sword. At the top, a door bursts open. Rain gusts in, cold and stinging. The roof is slick with moss. Beneath him, the castle burns. Banners twist and snap in the storm. The king's lions blaze against the gray, proud, golden, merciless. Thomas lifts the scroll to the wind. It dances like a falcon, fragile, defiant. A soldier shouts. He turns. Steel flashes. The blade drives through his side. He gasps, not in fear, but in defiance. His body folds, but his hand does not release the parchment. He falls to one knee, then to both. Rain mixes with blood. The world narrows to gray. But before darkness takes him, he does one last thing. He slides the scroll into a gap between two stones, hidden, safe. The soldier steps over him, unaware, and beneath the storm, the Magna Carta breathes still, its words resting in blood and rain. Somewhere beyond the siege, a baron rides hard through the mist. Another whisper carries through taverns and keeps. A monk copies a clause by candlelight. The fire has not gone out, not yet, and so ends the siege of one soul. But the war for justice, that has only just begun. The queen's bedchamber flickers with candlelight, the flames too gentle to match the fury beyond its walls. Lavender oil perfumes the air, a ghost of comfort. But Queen Isabella of Angoulême stands unmoved, rigid, regal, unreadable. Her silhouette is a statue carved from silence. Beyond the wooden door, King John rages. A goblet smashes, silver against stone, followed by a guttural cry that could belong to beast or man. He curses names she recognizes: barons, bishops, rebels, traitors. His voice cracks not with fear, but with the panic of a monarch, sensing the earth shifting beneath his throne. She listens with the precision of someone trained to survive. In her hand is parchment, creased, ink-stained, damp, where her grip has tightened. It was not addressed to her. No one would dare. It is a letter from a nobleman to another, a whispered prayer for the enforcement of the Magna Carta. Its language is veiled and reverent, written in the ink of desperation. But she reads between the lines. She hears the beat of rebellion rising. The Magna Carta does not speak to queens. It does not utter her name, nor carve her silhouette into its promises. It offers no sanctuary to royal wives, bound in ceremony and silence. Its blessings are for freemen, heirs, barons, born with swords and signatures. And yet, she reads it again, clause by clause. The charter scratches at the walls of her prison. She sees it not as salvation, but as signal. A king shackled to parchment means a court forced to bleed its secrets, and secrets are Isabella's kingdom. She knows rot when she smells it. It perfumes the hallways more potently than lavender. It lingers in the smiles of courtiers and the breath of poisoned goblets. It stains the linens of her marriage bed, that ceremonial coffin where dignity is buried and duty reigns. Her role has always been to serve, to soothe, to bear heirs and bear humiliation. But tonight, the words on this letter pulse with strange electricity. She traces one line with her finger: no widow shall be compelled to remarry. A pause, her lips part slightly. Not for herself, she is beyond rescue. But what of her daughter? What of the next girl crowned and caged? Could words written by men to restrain a king offer a blade sharp enough to cut her bonds? The door shudders. Another shout. King John demands wine, then silence, then blood. The guards shift nervously outside. She hears the scrape of metal armor. No one dares enter. Isabella folds the letter slowly, slipping it into her cloak. Her fingers tremble, but not from fear, from something colder, clarity. No bells are ringing to mark a revolution. No crowds storm the gates. And yet, something has begun. A reckoning, quiet as snow, certain as winter. She walks to the window, pulling back the curtain. The castle sleeps beneath a veil of mist. Somewhere below, the church bells toll midnight, a hollow, aching sound that tolls not for the king or the barons, but for the world, now forced to shift. A raven lands on the courtyard stone, black wings folded, watching. The queen watches back. She remembers the first time she saw her husband wield fear like a sword, charming in court, monstrous in chambers. John, once prince, now king, a man who mistrusted silence and loathed dissent. She had been 15 when she was married to him, 15, and already trained to mask herself. He made war with France. He made enemies of allies. He made orphans of those who crossed him. But he never made peace, not even in his own bed. And now he is cornered. The barons, fed fat on war and promises, have turned. Their swords, once raised for his cause, now cut against his crown. And in their revolt, for land, for law, for legacy, Isabella sees a mirror, not of mercy, but of method. Power does not bend, it breaks. And as the king breaks, so too does the illusion. In the great hall, scrolls are signed beneath torches that spit smoke into stone arches. Men argue over seals and oaths. They speak in legal tongues, but what they trade is blood. The blood of peasants, of rebels, of kings. They call it compromise. She calls it confession. And the confession is this: the king is no longer above the storm. Even he must kneel. Isabella walks away from the window. Her footsteps are soft, deliberate. She does not weep. Queens are not taught to weep. Instead, she remembers her mother's voice. When men begin to fear the law, the women must begin to remember it. The Magna Carta may not speak her name, but she will not forget it. Each clause, each syllable, etched by candlelight and conviction, has carved itself into her memory, not for power, for preservation. Because behind every king brought to heel, 1,000 women rise unseen. The door creaks. A pageboy stammers, announcing that the king has summoned his council. She nods without turning. Let them gather. Let them whisper of treaties and truces. Let them ink their names onto history's parchment. She too is writing something. Not with ink, but with silence, with presence, with witness. She touches the letter hidden beneath her cloak once more. It will never be seen in the records. Her name will not be mentioned in the clauses. But when her daughter reads of a widow's right to refuse, when a queen yet unborn claims dignity as inheritance, it will be because Isabella once stood still, while the world cracked open. The chamber dims as candles gutter low. Outside, thunder rolls, distant, but near enough to rattle the windows. The raven has not flown away. It perches still, unmoving, as if awaiting something. Perhaps a death, perhaps a birth. Isabella lifts her chin. No prayers on her lips, only the weight of knowing. The king may scream, the nobles may rise, the charter may burn or endure, but history has already shifted, and somewhere in the darkness, a woman begins to remember her name. The wind brushes the shutters gently. Tomorrow, the king will ride to meet his barons once more. Tomorrow, the ink will dry, but tonight, in this quiet hour, a queen dreams of a different world, not yet born, not yet spoken, only felt, and the raven watches, a spark. That's how it always begins, before revolution, before rebellion, before change. It is never thunder, it is quiet, a single ember shifting in the dark. In the forge at York, that ember lives inside a man named Thomas. The iron hisses, the coals spit, and through the veil of smoke, he hammers again. Clang. Each blow echoes deeper than iron. It pounds through memory, through hunger, through the silence of a winter no one asked for. The forge is warm, but outside, the world is brittle. Frost laces the window, like veins of a dying thing. Thomas does not speak as he works. He listens, to the fire, to the metal, to the questions that will not go away. Will they free us, Father? Her voice again, small, bright, unafraid. His daughter sits on the cold stone, tracing half-formed letters into soot with her finger, like some young monk before the altar. But this isn't a cathedral, this is a furnace. And he, not a priest, but a debtor, a father who once held a dream, now bound to a baron's will by coin he never spent. He looks at her, sees his brother's eyes, eyes that once stared up from a ditch, emptied by plague, forgotten by king and god. He sees his own mother's hands, cracked, grain-stained, trembling, under sheriff's fists. He sees too much, so he says nothing. Clang. They say the Magna Carta is a chain, a parchment, to bind the king, to fix his hand, to cool his blood. But what king feels the cold that the poor do? In the taverns, they speak of it like magic, whispered between pints, half sung by traveling friars with worn sandals and dangerous eyes. In the market, they speak lower, afraid. In the church, they do not speak of it at all. But the baron, Thomas's baron, talks of it like a badge. He praises liberty, spits when he says tyrant, and yet still pays late, still takes the shoes, still marks the ledgers in his favor. Justice, it seems, is noble when it suits the noble. Still, Thomas saw it. The paper, the seal, the Latin, that meant nothing, and everything all at once. He remembers the moment his friend unrolled it, ink dry, the wax broken. It had the smell of damp vellum, and wild hope. And something in Thomas stirred. A line scratched in Latin, meaningless to him, seemed to hum with power, not because it promised him freedom, but because it proved kings could be forced. He was not naive. He knew barons wrote it to protect what was already theirs, their castles, their coin, their pride. But something slipped through their fingers, and fell into the air like snow. An idea. That law might be a wall, not just a whip, that rulers might kneel, even briefly, to ink and seal. Clang. The forge glows brighter now, not with fire, but with rhythm. He feels it in his arms, not just labor, but purpose, not rebellion, not yet, but resistance in motion, like the first step of a long march. Before dawn breaks, he wipes sweat from his brow with a soot-stained sleeve. His daughter is asleep, now curled in the corner, arms wrapped around a carved wooden crucifix. He watches her,
and the silence is not empty, it hums. Outside, snow thickens. It falls on roofs where rats curl for warmth, on fields, hollowed by winter taxes, on graves too shallow for names. It falls on England itself, a land torn between crown and cloth, sword and scythe. And in that snowfall, a question drifts like smoke from a dying torch. What if this paper is more than a chain? What if it is a crack in the armor? Thomas walks to the forge door, opens it. The cold kisses his face like a warning, sharp and real. He looks out across the village. Lights flicker in windows. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere, an old man coughs his last. But somewhere, further, voices rise. He's heard them before, muffled in the wind. Voices in cloaks. Voices with conviction. They speak of rights, of common men, of fire and judgment, and things too large for farms and horseshoes. And suddenly, he sees it, not clearly, not fully, but like a shape behind thick mist, a future where his daughter can write her name without fear, a future where lords do not own every harvest, a future where justice speaks not in Latin, but in bread. He knows it is far, he knows it may never come in his lifetime, but still, it burns, not a flame, not yet, just an ember. He walks back to the forge, picks up the hammer. The iron is red-hot again, and this time, as he strikes, he whispers a name: John, the king, the tyrant, the man who bent beneath a seal, even if only for a moment. That whisper carries something heavier than anger. It carries a promise, not revenge, not revolt, but memory, so that one day, when another king forgets, someone will remember the sound of chains being born. The hammer falls, a shape forms, a horseshoe. Yes, but also something else, a symbol, a mark, hope forged in debt, dignity in soot. Behind him, his daughter stirs. Are you still working, father? He does not turn. I'm building something, he says, something that might last. She walks to him, takes his hand. It is rough, burned, trembling. She says nothing, only squeezes, and together, they listen, to the forge, to the wind, to a country holding its breath. The fire cracks low again. Outside, snow softens every sound but one, the steady beat of a man who dares to believe. And far to the south, in London, that parchment lies in silence, ink frozen, seal cracked, but still there, waiting for the next ember.
The Tower of London looms, a jagged tooth against the ink-black sky. Rain slithers down its stone, like sweat from a fevered brow. Somewhere within, a parchment breathes in the torchlight, fragile, trembling, holy. Archbishop Stephen Langton kneels before the altar. He is not alone, but he may as well be. The air behind him is thick with robes and rank, royal advisors, bishops, noble doubters cloaked in silence. Yet Langton speaks not to them. His voice is a whisper that barely stirs the flame. He addresses the hush between the candle flickers, the unseen, the eternal. Before him lies the Magna Carta, unfurled like scripture. The vellum, soft and stained with effort, curls slightly at the edges. Wax seals dangle like broken teeth. The ink is still wet in places, black veins on pale skin. Langton had imagined this moment through nights of sleepless diplomacy and thunderous risk. He had brokered a fragile peace between men who would rather kill than concede, barons clutching swords, a king clutching fear. He had stepped between them with nothing but the weight of old words and older beliefs. Now here it was, not peace, not victory, but possibility. He reaches out. His fingers trace the words slowly, reverently. Nollis liber homo capiatur. No free man shall be seized, nor imprisoned, save by lawful judgment. It is not a proclamation, it is a prayer. A fragile spell cast in ink, cloaked in Latin, wrapped in conditions and contingencies. But still, it is light. Flickering, barely born, it may die tomorrow, but tonight, it breathes. Langton's hand trembles, he knows what stands against it. Rome will frown, John will rage. Power does not yield to parchment, but the words are written, spoken, birthed, a truth that may be denied, but not unwritten. Outside, the Thames murmurs like a sleeping beast. London lies cloaked in silence, unaware that something irreversible has taken root beneath its stone heart. A truth that dares to remember the forgotten. He folds the document carefully, each crease like a closing eyelid, then, he rises. A wooden chest waits beside the altar, the lid groans as it opens, like a confession long buried. He places the parchment inside, sealing it with a rusted iron key. The echo of the lock clicks through the chamber, like a thunderclap in miniature. He kisses the seal. Behind him, the gathered men say nothing. Even the doubters are still, because in that moment, beneath the gaze of flickering candlelight and crumbling stone, it is not ambition they witness. It is faith, not faith in God, but in words, in the ghost of justice. The room exhales. Langton bows his head, hands clasped like a penitent monk. His voice, silent, lifts in prayer, not for the king, not for the barons, but for memory, for the fragile idea that this moment might outlive all of them, that parchment may survive what sword cannot. And in that flickering dark, history begins to turn. Far beneath the altar, where rats scurry between ancient stones and chains hang limp from rusted hooks, another kind of memory stirs. The tower is no stranger to screams, to secrets. It has swallowed treasons and tortures, kings and fools alike. And now, it houses a dream. Up above, Langton's face is drawn with the weight of knowing. He has seen kings kneel to popes, and popes fall to kings. He has buried brothers, watched thrones change hands in blood. He knows this fragile charter may not survive the year. But that is not the point. The point is that it exists, in a world where might makes law, and silence keeps secrets. Something has spoken, something has said. No, no more. No man is above the reckoning of right, not even a king. Outside, dawn approaches slowly, veiled in mist and chill. The city stirs, a cart wheel here, a dog's bark there. The people do not yet know what has happened while they slept, but the wind carries it, whispers it through alley and thatch, across bridges and markets. Something has shifted. Back inside, Langton turns from the altar. His eyes are tired but lit from within. The room behind him, once crowded, is emptying. The whispers already beginning. Some call it treason, some call it folly. But Langton does not listen. He walks alone through the stone corridor, his footsteps echoing like a litany. Every torch he passes throws a shadow taller than the last. Down the corridor, in another room, King John paces. His eyes are red with sleeplessness, with rage. He has signed, he has yielded, but he has not surrendered. Not in his heart, not in the marrow of his throne. He sees the charter not as salvation, but humiliation. A noose inked in noble blood. His advisers hover like carrion. They murmur of Rome, of annulment, that the Pope will side with the crown, crush this rebellion of parchment, that Langton has overstepped, that nothing signed under duress can hold. And yet, the document exists. That truth scratches at the edge of John's mind like a rat beneath floorboards. The barons cheer in their halls. The bishops whisper in their cloisters. The people, oh the people, they begin to hope. That is the true danger. Not ink but belief. A scribe enters, hesitant. Shall I prepare copies, my lord? John says nothing. He stares out the arrows-lit window. London stretches before him, veiled in rising fog. Somewhere out there, the parchment rests. Waiting, whispering, like a candle flickering in a storm. He turns away. Let it rot, he mutters. But the words are already loose in the world, and words, once loosed, are not so easily chained. In a monastery far from the tower, a young monk copies the charter by candlelight. His fingers smudged with ink, his eyes raw from reading. He copies the words not because he was ordered to, but because he believes they must be preserved. He does not know Langton. He has never seen the king, but he feels the tremor in history. Something ancient has cracked. Something new seeps in like water beneath a door. Nullus liber homo capiescer. The monk looks up, eyes catching the candle's flame. He repeats the words softly, as if afraid to disturb them. Then he writes on. And so the chapter closes, not with a cheer or a crown, but with a whisper, a sealed chest, a quiet vow in a stone room. The tower still stands, and the king still rules, but beneath the surface, the world has changed, because now, there is a document, and within it, a prayer, and within that prayer, memory, and memory, once lit is hard to extinguish. The wind picks up. In the east, a storm gathers. In the west, the ink dries. And somewhere between, the future begins to stir.